Okay, so we should start. So, very welcome to Manjesh from IIT Bombay. We will be talking today on distributed learning in multiplayer heterogeneous networks. So, welcome Manjesh. Over to you.
Thanks, Ketan, for the invitation. So this is some work I'm going to present, which I've been doing, which is of my interest in the last few years. It is called basically application of this bandit algorithms in a multiplayer setting. Okay, so this is a joint work with two BTech students who were doing their dual degree project with me. He's Harshvardhan and Shravan. They are now graduated. One is at Boston Consultancy Group and another is at Qualcomm. And this is one of my collaborator here. He is Sumit Darak. He is at Triple IT Delhi. Okay. I'm suspicious that some of the slides I put it in a hurry. Maybe there could be some errors, but we will figure out as we go along. So am I audible to everyone, right, clearly? Or should I need to increase my volume or something?
I think it is fine.
It is fine, okay. And I also keep my marker in case it's required. Okay, so Ketan, broadly, I will try to do it around 40-45 minutes of this presentation. So maybe someone of you can alert me if when I'm around 30-35 minutes.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, the motivation of this talk is basically a cognitive radio network. We know that in a cognitive radio network, there'll be primary users and secondary users and all. Our focus in this is going to be mostly from the point of view of secondary users. But this necessarily need not be just that application. Like you can think of any IoT networks or anything where there are multiple users and they are trying to access to a common base station and they want like a kind of seamless connectivity. All this, what we are going to come can be of use there. So let's say we have a network where there are multiple users. And if these users are all on a, let's say, licensed users, there will be always dedicated control channels will be there, which is going to assign them different channels. So they are not going to compete for the channels. The channels are going to be the resources there. They don't need to compete, like network is going to take care, plan, and they are going to allocate whatever resources, but there won't be any conflict. They may be denied because resource is not available, but the same resource may not be, will not be assigned to the same person. Because of that, there won't be conflict. Okay. However, suppose we consider an ad hoc network, right? In the ad hoc network, by its very nature, we can't expect to have like some control channel present here, some control channel, okay? All the nodes have is some data, like they just want to use whenever these channels are available, use and transmit whatever the data they have. So you can visually see why this comes into IoT networks, right? In IoT networks, we want like seamless connectivity. Nodes are always monitoring some quantity like temperature or whatever, some things, and they want to keep on updating the information. But these devices are so many, I can't think of having a centralized infrastructure there. So there comes ad hoc networks. So in such things, it may happen that when these nodes are trying to access, they may try to be competing for the same resource. Because of that, some collisions or some kind of resource competition can happen. For example, I said in the first case, maybe a network planner, if exist, he could make sure that the resources are assigned orthogonally. But if not, two users, in this case, as I said, our resources channel, they may end up taking the same resource, and there may be collision happening in this case, right? And we know that if two users are using the same channel, there is going to be collision. That's a bad thing. We want to overcome such issues. And this is the setup we are interested in. We want to ensure that, just to give me a minute, there is some disturbance. I will be back. Just a minute. Okay, so this is our setup where we have many users and they want to use this available resources. And we want these users to get as much as possible throughput. So our interest would be here to maximize the network throughput. And if we are interested in maximizing the network throughput, collisions are a bad thing here, because if we are going to collide, then it is like none of you are going to get any throughput. That's like a lost round, and you have to again attempt. So in this case, we are going to look into such scenarios where we want to maximize the expected sum rate. And this we want to achieve in a total distributed setting. And I'm again highlighting the point distributed because there is no central controller here who is going to plan the allocation of resource for these users. They have to decide on their own how to select, and accordingly they are going to get some rate. That rate could be 0 if there is a collision. So we are going to assume that there are n users and k channels. Okay. Now suppose, and there are multiple channels, like let's say these are all my k channels that I'm thinking about. Like there are channels, users can try to transmit on one of these channels. And each channels, when they use, they are going to get some rate. Now the question would be, if your goal is to maximize the expected rate, what is the best thing you can do? Obviously, if there are n users, if I want to get the best throughput, the total network throughput in this case, is just go and use the top n channels. What I mean by top n channels, if each of these channels, they are going to have their own rates, you just order them from the top rate one in the decreasing order, then the first n channels are the top n channels for me. And if there are n users, you simply give one channel from this top n channels, then that is going to be your maximum throughput you can expect, right? So this problem looks very straightforward, right? Like if I know if there are multiple channels, all I need to do is take the top n channels. Let's say if there are 3 users and these 3 happens to be the channels with the highest rate, take them, assign one to each of the user, make sure that they are orthogonal, there is no overlap, then that's it. But what's the difficulty here? We are in a distributed setting, right? The mean rates may not be known to the users. That has to be first figured out. Nobody has told me. This is all in a distributed setting. And how many other users are there, that may also not known to me. That n, I said, number of users, they may not be known. And there is no centralized controller to help me. And another thing is, this is like, there's no way I can communicate with you. So I can't, I don't have any means to do some cooperation. I want to do cooperation, but I don't have a means to do this cooperation. And if 2 users simultaneously select the same channel, then they are going to collide. Okay. Now we are talking about a distributed setting, right? And everybody is going to make a decision on their own. And because of that, you will realize that these collisions are unavoidable is here, because nobody is there to tell me, like, if I'm going to select, if somebody else is also going to select the same, it may happen that 2 users may end up selecting the same channel and collisions could happen. And as already said, collisions are bad because whenever collision happens, I'm not going to get any rates. Anyway, I didn't get any rate. Further, I need to try again. That means I'm going to use battery more, and that is also going to drain my battery and putting some limitation on my energy, or like diminish my energy efficiency.
Manjesh, a clarification.
Yeah.
So, did you mean collisions are unavoidable or collisions are unavoidable?
Collisions.
Oh, okay. Right.
Collisions. Collision is my standard definition of collision. Two channels, two users are trying to access the same channel, then they're going to have a collision.
Yes, but I mean, it was written collisions are unavoidable, so I was a little confused.
Yeah, the point is collisions. Oh, I see. Okay, there is a typo. Sorry, I didn't. Yeah, I also work on collisions in network economics. So I sometimes often try to mix these two terms. Yeah, collision here. Thanks for that clarification. Sure. Okay, so what is the difference now? If there is only one player, if you are going to think about only one player in the network, and there are multiple channels, then you can right away think of this as like a simple learning problem, right? Because if there is only one player, all you need to figure out is which is the best channel and transmit. You don't need to worry about all these collisions and all. But now we are in a multiplayer setting and there is no central controller here to help me. So we are in this paradigm here. Like we want to first learn how are the channel rates. Even learning channel rates is not good enough because two guys may end up selecting the same thing, same channels, and there could be collisions. So I have to make a decentralized decision here. So this is the paradigm we'll be interested in. We want to learn there are multiple agents and we have to make a distributed decisions here. And our goal is to make sure that we are going to maximize the network throughput. So the clarification here is the nodes are not competing here. They want to cooperate. It's just that because of this ad hoc nature or this decentralized nature, they don't have a mechanism to cooperate. But still, we want them to achieve the best network throughput possible in a decentralized or in a distributed manner. So this is going to be our goal. Develop distributed algorithm to maximize sum right while keeping the collisions low. Okay, so this is how I'm going to organize my talk. I hope the problem is clear, like what is the problem we are trying to solve. And as we saw already, we want to go, we are in a setting where we are with multiple players. There is not one player, but there are multiple players. And we have to use somehow multiplayer bandit setting here. I am going to focus on two settings here. First setting is called homogeneous setting and the second setting is called heterogeneous setting. I will clarify what is homogeneous and heterogeneous. It is in terms of whether the players see the network gains in a similar way or different way. Earlier, I thought I will go into in the heterogeneous setting, I will consider two further possibility of performance evaluation criteria, that is optimal allocation and stable allocation. But I couldn't put material on this. I'm just going to talk about optimal allocation in this work. Okay. So I'm sure all of you have some background on Bandit. Now it is so widely used. I just put it here just for the sake of completeness. So what is a multi-arm Bandit setting? Like we have set of actions. Action can, in the multi-arm Bandit language, we can treat them as arms. And when I'm going to play an action, I'm going to observe a reward associated with that action. So each actions are going to be associated with some reward distribution. When I'm going to play an action, I'm going to observe the reward. So this is the canonical representation of this multi-arm bandits. Like, let's say this is, you are the one who are in a casino and you want to identify which of these casino machines gives you the maximum returns. So you are going to pull the levers and observe what is the win or loss in that game, and accordingly you are going to figure out. Now, obviously, in this setting, your goal would be to identify the best action as quickly as possible, because that is where you are going to make more money if you are in a casino setting. That is where your chances of winning are more. Okay, so what is here in this? My policy is going to be like which arm to pull in each round. So IT is the action that I'm going to take in round T. And when I'm going to take action IT, the environment, you a priori don't know the environment. That environment is what the underlying distributions, which you don't know. When you're going to play an action IT, you are going to observe the associated noisy reward, which has a mean mu IT. This I am going to specifically talk about stochastic multi-arm bandit setting here. There is another variant adversarial, which we are not going in this. So if you are going to play in T rounds, this actions IT, so this is your expected mean reward. Okay. Whereas your best or the optimal mean would have been, like, if you want to see what is the maximum you are going to get, is simply if you are going to play the arm with highest mean. So I forgot to write here, but mu star here corresponding to the arm with the highest mean. And this is what you are going to get in expectation if you already know the means, right? In that case, you are going to, it is going to be maximized when you always play the best arm, and this is the total reward you are going to get. Now, either I am going to keep my goal as to maximize this expected reward, total reward, or alternatively, I can think of minimizing my regret. So minimizing regret, okay, the regret basically tells what is the best, how far you are away from the best. Like T mu star is the best you could have gotten, and this is what you are getting from your policy. You can't get all the time T mu star because you don't know the environment. Because of that, the mean values you don't know. So because of that, right from round one, you can't keep pulling the, we don't expect the learner to pull the optimal one. So because of that, he may be pulling different arms, and this is his total expected value. So this is the regret. So this is all standard, right? Now we want to think about the multi-agent version of this. Okay, now as I said, first we'll get started with the homogeneous setting. We are going to treat each arm like a channel here in our case, and it is associated with the stochastic reward. I am going to denote the random variable associated with the underlying distribution as xk, and it is going to have a mean of value mu k. So here is one representation. Let's say in this case, I have 6 arms, that is 6 channels. They have the mean values mu1, mu2 like this. If only, let's say, one of the players selects channel K, he is going to observe a reward drawn according to this xk. If multiple players use the same arm, then collision happens, then they are going to get a 0 value. For example, in this case, let's say all the users are playing different arms. This guy is using 1, this guy is using arm 3, and this guy is using arm 4. So he is going to get a sample drawn from arm 4, this guy from 3, this from 1. But if you see here, these 2 guys are trying to pull the same arm. So because of that, there is a collision happening, and both of them are going to get a 0 reward. And now I'm going to assume that irrespective of who pulls that arm, the underlying distribution remains the same, this xk. This xk for the kth arm, it is not going to be a function of any player. It is same. Whether I pull or you pull a particular arm, it is going to draw as reward sample from the same distribution. Okay. And this is exactly what I call it as homogeneous setting. And the homogeneous setting, I mean, vaguely we can think of happens when all the nodes are in a similar environment. Because of that, they're going to see a similar channel gains. And because of that, maybe we can use such kind of homogeneous models there. Now, what is the policy here? Now, since this is a multiplayer setting, there are multiple learners here, and each guy is going to take his own action. And in each time t, player n is going to select his action, and that I'm going to denote as int. So if it is a single player, I don't need to make this distinction. I don't need to append subscript this n. But this is a multiplayer setting, so there is one algorithm run by each of the players separately. And I'm going to denote this collision indicator here. For the nth player, if there is a collision happens, I'm going to set this indicator as 1. Yeah, otherwise, this is going to be 0. So in the multiplayer setting, I also need to worry about this collisions, right? And this collision indicator is what does the job for me. Okay. Now, just extending the notion of regret to this multiplayer setting, this is how we are going to define the regret. Now, as I said earlier, in a homogeneous setting, if there are n players, the optimal thing to do is just identify the top n arms and assign to each player one of the arms from this top n arms. It does not matter who gets which arm in this top n arms. As long as each of the player gets one arm from the top n arms, that's good. That is what is going to maximize my throughput. So that is what the oracle is going, that is what the best I could get. So this is a throughput I'm going to get, or the rate I'm going to get in one round. So n star here is going to denote the top n arms. And I'm going to do this over t rounds if I know all the values, like if I'm like an oracle. And naturally, there won't be any collisions here, right? This is the total throughput, maximum throughput I can get. Whereas if I'm going to use a policy which is going to play int in round, it may happen that there could be collision. This indicator need not be 0 all the time, or it need not be 1 all the time. It could be 0. And because of that, I may not get any reward. And this is the total throughput I'm going to get because of using my policy, which is going to play action int in round t. Now, this is the difference is what I'm going to take it as a regret for my multiplayer version in the homogeneous setting. And also I'm interested in the total number of collisions I'm going to incur. As I said earlier, collisions matter because collision results in a loss of throughput in addition to loss of energy. So I also count total number of collisions, and I'm going to look for both these parameters, performance criteria, both my regret as well as collision, when I'm going to look for evaluating or comparing two algorithms. And now our goal is going to be minimize the regret while keeping collisions as low as possible. So as I said, collisions are going to be unavoidable in the multiplayer bandit setting in the distributed because of the decentralization. But yes, they are unavoidable, but I should not be happy with any number of collisions. I want to keep them as low as possible. Okay, these are coming a bit late, but that's fine. I'll cover this. Okay, so at this point, I want to see if you have any question about the setting we have. I'm just trying to see if I see what's this. I want to see if there are any questions.
It's fine. I think you can continue.
Okay, great. Yeah, anybody has any questions, please interrupt me at any point. Okay, now I want to just take you through literature on this topic. So one broad classification on which we can classify this literature on this multiplayer bandit is how these collisions are used. Right, so collisions are unavoidable, but collisions in this case are also providing some information, right? Like if two guys are selecting the same channel and I see there is a collision, I kind of automatically get an indication that somebody else also trying to pull that. And because of that, maybe it kind of gives me a hint or like whatever, like that channel is in high demand. So maybe that has a, that is something I should also go for. But that's actually bad. So based on how we are going to use collisions, we can broadly classify the works that are coming up in this area. So one set of work which I put under this class of works which are going to use collisions as signals, and another class of work which use collisions as a means to communicate between the players. So as I said earlier, there is no centralized mechanism for nodes to talk, even though they want to cooperate, but collisions can be utilized for the same purpose. Okay, so now let's focus on what are the works that are going to use collisions as signal. I'm just listing it like so that if you are interested in this work later, you can go into this. So the natural algorithm in all the single player bandits is a UCB algorithm, right? This work that appeared in JSAC 11, they proposed an randomized version of this UCB called RORAND, and that uses collisions kind of as a signal, whether that arm is going to give me high reward or not. And subsequently, there are many papers that have come. For example, this is one paper called Musical Chairs, where it kinds of uses collisions to know how many users are there. Because if I'm going to see more number of collisions in the network, right, possibly there are more number of users. And it is important to know the number of users in the network to even compute what is the optimal throughput, or what is the channels I should be looking at. Because I said I should be looking at the top n channels, right? So here, even that n estimation is important. So the musical chair does that using random hopping. And some variants of that have come, like for example, MC Topham tries to improve RORAND. So you see that like earlier work on this multiplayer bandits was like in the beginning of 2010, 2011 that time. But like recently, the recent in this topic has picked up, mostly I think because all these IoT networks and all, where we can't expect a centralized scheme to exist for communication. We have also built some work on this. This is what I'm going to talk a bit today, called tracking work. So we build on musical chairs, and we propose a new algorithm called tracking, which is going to significantly improve on the regret performance while keeping your collisions to the smallest possible value. And there are recently also some works which are going to explicitly use collision as a communication means. See, like ultimately, if you can ultimately want to cooperate, but there is no dedicated channel for cooperation, but somehow if I use this unavoidable collision itself as a means of communication, maybe I can do better. So our work in this YOPT proposes a leader-follower approach for this. And recently, using similar ideas, some papers, SI, so DLC is like distributed learning and coordination. SIC is synchronization involves communication. So such papers have come recently. All of them like do some forced collision for some implicit communication. Okay. Okay, now I want to quickly take you through our algorithm called static tracking. I'm only going to give an idea about static tracking. We have another variant of this called dynamic tracking, where the users, okay, fine. I forgot to make this distinction. In all this multiplayer bandit, right? There are multiple levels of complexities. One is there are multiple players. Just a minute. as we also saw, there are multiple players. One is this multiple players. And one is there is no coordination. And the third possible complication can be the users can come and go. What we call it static and dynamic network. Like for example, if you are thinking about a ad hoc network, you don't expect all the nodes to be available or active all the time, right? Some nodes, when they have data to transmit, they may become active, and after that they may sleep. And when they sleep, like they are no more in the network. That time the network throughput may be something different. So static and dynamic things also plays into picture. I'm only focusing as of now on static, but a similar thing can be also done for dynamic. Okay, our algorithm consists of these three phases called random hopping. This random hopping is what earlier I said is like a musical chair variant. In addition to that, we have sequential hopping, and the third phase of our algorithm is called tracking. Okay, what is this random hopping? So the random hopping, as the name says, it is just like you randomly select one of the available channels and transmit. And if you see collision on that, you continue to again in the next round select another channel selected uniformly and random and play it. If you don't see any collision on that channel, you kind of take it for yourself. You stick to that channel. And after that, you start doing a sequential hopping phase. So what is sequential hopping phase? As its name indicates again, once I enter sequential hopping phase, I kind of go through the channel sequentially. Like if I end up, let's say I have some these 5 channels, and I ended up on these channels. When I saw no collision, what you do is in the next round you go down 4th channel, then go to 5th channel, and then come back to channel 1, 2, like this. You continue to do sequential hopping, and this is what this mod operation is going to tell you. And you are going to do it certain number of rounds. And what is the advantage of doing this sequential hopping? The good thing about this sequential hopping is if all the users are on a different, if all of you are ended up on a different channel, and now you are doing a sequential hopping, you are kind of getting collision-free samples of the channels, right? And that's a good thing, because getting a collision-free samples is going to help you estimate what is the means of this channel rates, and that will help you in identifying what is the optimal set of arms, right? So the thing is, we have to decide how long I should be doing sequential hopping. That I'm going to denote it as T0 round. We should also, this random hopping is going to terminate automatically, because at some point or the other, you are going to find a channel on which you are going to see no collision. So that is going to happen eventually. Like it's not going, like you will not perpetually going to see collisions. And once you don't see that collision, you have to do sequential hopping certain number of rounds, so that you estimate your arms in up to certain degree of accuracy. After that, you are going to go into tracking phase. Now, since the tracking is the main crux of this algorithm, I'm going to spend a bit more time on this. Okay, what is the tracking phase doing? The tracking, as the name indicates, the users are going to look for an arm which is better than their current arm. So in the sequential hopping phase, we said that users are going to get sufficient number of samples. They are going to estimate their mean value, and based on that, they can order them. And this order can be the correct order, provided all of them have got sufficiently many samples. Okay, now what to do? Let's now try to visualize this. I hope all of you are in sync with me, but as I said, if anything you have lost, you can ask me. The goal is not to cover entire material, but the goal is to give idea here. So let's say you have 6 channels. after your sequential hopping phase, you ordered, you know that you ended up on this channel 2, or you ended up on a channel which has rank 2, and this other user ended up on a channel which has rank 4. Now, obviously, you have rank 4, you want to go to rank 3, rank 2, then rank 1 if they are available. So naturally, first thing, the guy who is on channel 2, he want to take up the best channel. He want to go to a channel which has rank 1. And similarly here, the user 2 also want to move up. So after one round, what happens? This guy moved to this one. U2 came to, okay, so U2 came to this channel 3, then U2 came to channel 2. Like now after this 3 rounds, you will end up with this. Okay, what I'm doing. Yeah, but if you continue to do this, there's a problem here, right? Like now, fine. This U1 went into the chop channel. He's happy. He got the best one. But U2 also trying to do that. But now he realized that, oh, okay, that the rank 1 channel is already taken by somebody. So he need to revert back. Like if you also continue to stay there, both are going to lose. And as I said, they are cooperating. They want to cooperate. So this guy want to come back. And because of that, he will come back and eventually both of them will end up on the top 2 channel. This is the basic idea of trekking. The users, whatever the current channel they have, they want to move upwards. And if everybody tries to move upwards, they will eventually end up on the top channels. But there's a problem here, right? Like for example, let's say there are 3 users and all of them are already like at the end of sequential hopping phase, they already ended up on the best possible thing. Like one guy, so the top 3 channels, each of them have the top have taken one of these top 3 channels. So if they want to continue to do trekking, this U2 will go on the top channel. He will collide with user 1 and U3 will now take U2, take the second channel. But now, if everybody does this, like they will all end up on channel 1, they should be colliding with each other. So we want to make sure that if they are going to see collision on the channel above, they should revert back to their original channel, so that if something above them is already taken, they should not take over. Okay, they should only take those better channels than their current versions, which are unoccupied. So that is what, like they should come back, and before they take any channel, like like U3 here, it goes to U. If you want to go to U1, possibly it should wait. Like it should not be in a hurry to go and take whatever is better than what they have. Possibly they should have a little bit patience, so that if they take, so suppose this guy U3 who is on 3, when he go to second channel and he sees that he don't see any collision for few rounds, then only you should take. We are allowing such kind of waiting period because the guy who left this channel and went to the above channel, he may be coming back. So he should allow for such provisions, and there should be some waiting period. And this is what we call it as a reservation period on our work. And we appropriately calculate this. And it turns out that if you are in some K channel, you should be waiting for K-1 rounds before you can take it over. If you are going to see a collision within K-1 rounds, you should come back. So this is so with this kind of tracking algorithm, we can ensure that eventually everybody learns the statistics of the arms, and also everybody is going to move to the top ones, and that is what is going to give us the maximum throughput. And this algorithm is pretty simple to analyze. And here I have just put these numbers. Like you will be able to, there are 3 phases, as I said, right? Random hopping phase is going to take certain number of rounds. Then there is sequential hopping phase that is going to take certain number of rounds. and then it is a trekking phase. After these phases are done successfully, you have reached the optimal allocation. Then there is no regret after that. So whatever till this many rounds, you are going to incur regret, and that is what the regret is characterized in terms of this. You see that the sequential hopping phase is going to be the largest phase here because this has an epsilon square in the denominator, and to what accuracy you want to estimate the means is going to depend on this epsilon. Okay, but the good thing about this is, even though this is the largest phase, you have ensured that in the sequential hopping phase, there is no collision, right? Because they are already kind of orthogonalized, and they are going through sequentially, so they don't collide with each other. So there's no loss of energy in this. And because of that, we will see that this gives a significant advantage in terms of the empirical performance. And also, like, we are also able to show that the number of collisions is going to be like bounded by some constant number here. And this is a significant improvement compared to what already exists. For example, we are able to show that our regret improves by a factor of 4K. And this is a good thing because like it is also like if you have more number of channels, actually the other algorithms does poorly if you are going to increase, but whereas ours will not do poorly. And also in terms of collision, we are going to get a significant reduction in the collision. And that is also going to be significant as the factor of gain is linear in K. This whatever this characterization we have, we can just see that through simulation. Like as I said, our goal was like taking this musical chair algorithm that appeared in ICML paper, and we took that as like a benchmark and improve that. So you will see that like the regret that is blue, I think there is a typo here. The red and blue should have been interchanged. So red here corresponds to that of musical chairs, and blue correspond to that of our static tracking, and we are going to do significantly better. And also, like if you count the number of collision, you see that the order of magnitude reduction in the number of collisions when we use static stacking. So because of this, we not only improve in terms of the regret performance, and we save a lot on collision, and saving collision, this has to be complementary, right? Like I can't improve regret performance unless I keep the collisions to minimal. And that's what happening. And my gain in the regret performance is basically because I'm able to control my collision significantly. And this collision controlling is also a good thing because it is saving on my energy. Okay, at this point, I want to see if we have any question on or any inputs on the heterogeneous setting. This is one work I just want to discuss. I hope the setting and basic algorithm is clear.
Maybe you can elaborate a bit about how good these regret bounds are.
Yeah, so that is what, like I said, right? This is the kind of okay. So maybe since you asked this question, maybe we can explain a bit more. So this bound, if you see that, the way I have stated is, first I assume that I know the gap. This is the suboptimality gap. Like all who have known this bandit algorithm, so the suboptimality gap is basically tells you what is the difference between the mean of the optimal arm and the next best optimal arm. So I kind of assume that I know that suboptimality gap. And then I'm stating a high probability bound here. So what it is saying is, see, if you tell me the gap, some lower bound, I only know the lower bound. By the way, like I don't need the exact value of delta, the suboptimality gap. I want some lower bound on this. What I'm saying is, with certain probability, my regret is going to be bounded. Now, how does it compare? So this is like a constant here. You don't see anything this growing in terms of time t, right? That is what you also see in the experiments here. Like our learning is going to happen in the initial rounds, and after that, like after my tracking phase is over, I am doing as good as an oracle. Because of that, I don't incur any regret, but this I'm guaranteeing this is going to happen with certain probability. That is the probability that you asked me to guarantee. Now, there is a, as I said, there is a musical chair algorithm, which I initially discussed here. What it does is it only does a pure random hopping thing. Like it just all the time, certain number of rounds, it goes on random hopping. But they say that random hopping gives me sufficient number of samples to estimate the channels and the number of players. But because it is estimating multiple parameters using random hopping, it kinds of forces a lot of collisions in the network, because only when they have more number of collisions, their number of player estimation is going to be better. We are trying to overcome that issue through our sequential phase step and our tracking phase. So because of that, we are saying that if you're going to plug in all these quantities in the regret bound, right? Like, and if you compare the regret bound, whatever the musical chair algorithm gives, after doing some simple algebraic manipulation, we can show that our algorithm can be factor 4k better than them. And my collisions can be at least 12.5k factor less than what you are going to incur in the musical chair algorithm. So all we are saying here is in this regret bound, after TRH, so basically this sum, if you are going to take this sum, TRH plus TSH plus TTR. So random hopping, sequential hopping, and tracking phase. You are going to spend this certain number of rounds as given, but once you are going to spend that many of rounds, you are done. Like you know everything about the network, and everybody can go, and everybody's already has taken the top channels. The network throughput is optimal, no more regret. Musical chair also give a similar bound, and this sum is multiplied by n here, but because there are n players, I'm going to accumulate the regret from all the players, right? It is just like this sum. Musical chairs also gives the similar bound. Now we compare our regret bound with that, and these are the kind of observations we make. Because of our better strategy to avoid collisions, we are going to gain in terms of regret as well as in terms of the collisions like this.
Okay, I had a follow-up question. So it is good that you are beating musical chairs algorithm, but let's say that what is the regret of the centralized scheme? That is the
right,
like a lower bound.
Right. So that is like a lower bound. That's exactly correct. So maybe the centralized scheme, that is going to be like, in this case, I am giving you a high probability constant bound. This is not like a sublinear kind of a regret I'm giving you, right? Something that is going in log t or something. So because of that, we have to compare this result with the sample complexity result of a centralized scheme. The centralized scheme sample complexity result is also going to be of in the multiplayer case, it is going to be again something like a log 1 by delta upon something like 1 upon delta square. So that delta square corresponds to the suboptimality gap. But here I'm assuming a lower bound on this. So because of that, so as I said, this is going to be the dominant term. And that is almost like in a way optimal up to this logarithmic terms, right? Like it has like all the terms that are matching here.
Okay. Okay. I think that's what I wanted to know.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, okay, fine. So we have to compare this regret bound, like, okay, even though I'm talking about a regret bound, but this regret bound we are basically deriving through this sample complexity analysis, right? Yeah, so the sample complexity analysis will give a lower bound of this nature. And we will see that like we are also getting regret bound of that nature. And this extra factor K is just again because it's a multiplayer setting. So if it is a multiplayer sample complexity result, it will also have this extra factor N here in the lower bound. So because of that, in a way, like we are optimal, but yes, we needed this extra information. And all the subsequent works after ours that have come in this field, they exactly try to get rid of such kind of assumptions and try to match whatever the lower bound is there for either in the regret or the sample complexity setting.
Okay. Like you mentioned musical chairs, but that was like 2016 paper, right? So
That's
the
the 20.
later papers have studied the same problem, or?
Oh yeah, the later papers have indeed studied the same problem, but like as I said, they are going to use collision in a different way. Like this musical chairs did not use collisions to kind of have a means for exchange of information between the players. But the subsequent ones, they try to exploit that, and indeed they try to do better than these musical chairs.
Okay, okay, understood.
Yeah, so okay, just like because that's for exactly that reason I had put this recent literature on perspective here. Like this is like a 2016 paper, right? Like subsequently, this 2019 paper and 2020 paper, they all talk about the actual regret bounds, which are like order optimal. They try to compare with the standard MAB lower bound, like which is like log T by delta, where delta is the suboptimality gap, right? Like K, if there are n number of players. Sorry, this is the K number of arms, K log T by delta. They try to achieve such kind of a bound at this paper that have come recently. That time I have not gone into discussion here.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I think you asked me to remind.
Yeah. How am I doing time?
5, yeah.
What is how I'm doing on time? How much time left?
It is 5 o'clock, so maybe you can wrap up soon.
Okay. What is the time now? Oh, it's 5 o'clock. I took already so much time. I see. I'll just wind up in 5 minutes. Okay. Okay. So now this is about whether all the players are going to see the same kind of gains or not. It may happen that users may not say the same gain. For example, user 1, he may have a gain of mu11, but on the same channel, user may have a different gain. So that is what I'm going to call it as a heterogeneous setting, right? And there is also a quite rich set of works that has come up in this field. One paper called, again, here we can broadly classify the literature as some papers that go with the game theoretic approach, and some things go with this collision as implicit communication approach. So there is one algorithm which uses Bartsekov's algorithm, and another paper that has come recently, I think this is 2019, which again uses some utility maximization theory to achieve optimal bounds. So I wanted to talk about our algorithm called ESR algorithm, and which explicitly uses this collision for communication. I see. Okay, I think I should be able to wind up this in another 5 minutes. Okay, so now what is the different thing here? As I said, the gains, right? The rewards I'm going to see is now going to be user dependent. Earlier, they were just like ARM dependent or channel dependent, but now in addition, they're also user dependent. And now, whether I'm going to see a collision or not, my reward is going to be defined. If I'm going to see no collision, whatever the underlying reward I'm going to see is I will get. I will also allow, if there is a collision, I will get 0. And in this heterogeneous setting, we also allow the nodes to do sensing. The sensing is what allows them to communicate with each other. And whenever I'm going to use a slot for sensing, I'm not going to get any throughput in that. I'm going to basically listening to somebody else. So the reward is going to be 0 in that case. And again, every node has to decide what is the arm they are going to select. And now this is like an assignment problem we are ending up with this, right? Like now we have to decide which node is going to take which arm. It is unlike in the homogeneous setting where the solution was simple. Okay, just take the top n arms. But now in the heterogeneous case, we'll end up with like a assignment problem. And this like assignment problem, when you have, maybe like you have to use something like Hungarian algorithms or other method to solve it. And accordingly, your regret definition is going to change. And what is the fundamental difference between homogeneous setting and heterogeneous setting? In the homogeneous setting, it is just like a vector of means. If there are n users, this was the unknown parameters. But when you have homogeneous setting, like you are facing a matrix to estimate, and this is always going to be complicated, right? So this is the challenge, and because of this, if you want to come up with an optimal assignment, not only users has to estimate their own statistics, but they also need to know that of the others. Yeah, maybe I can skip this. Because of this kind of communication is required, we allow user to kind of communicate with each other through some signaling scheme. And our algorithm works like this. Initially, like in homogeneous case, like again, users are going to orthogonalize, and then the algorithm runs in epochs. And in the each epoch, users are going to explore the arms. And then this is the second stage in that epoch. All the players are going to exchange information with each other through this signaling scheme. And after that, there is an exploitation phase where exploitation in each phase is going to happen for the double the number of rounds compared to the previous one. Again, the question comes, how I'm going to do signaling? You can come up with different means. Like what we proposed is like a Bernoulli signaling and packetized signaling. In Bernoulli signaling, if your current estimate is mu hat and j, you can encode this and transmit like a sequence of collisions, translate this as a binary signals, and so like depending on the sequence of 1, 0 received, one can estimate this value again with some tolerance. Or you can do packetization where you do some encoding but with some loss. Okay, yeah, this is ultimately we are able to show like our this kind of exploitation, signaling, and exploitation algorithm will lead us to a near optimal algorithm. As you see, we are going to get an algorithm which is like log 1 plus beta t. So this is like a near optimal algorithm we have. And in fact, we have a variant of this, which we thought like gives a logarithmic bound. And we did mention that in the paper, but later we realized that that proof was wrong. So as of now, all the concrete thing we have is an algorithm which gives you near logarithmic bound. Okay, that's it. And these are some numerical performance we have. We actually compared it with the DE3 algorithm and DE3 Thompson sampling based algorithm, which appeared in this control transaction of controls net paper. And obviously, because of our efficient signaling scheme, we are able to do much better in terms of the regret performance. Basically, the other algorithms, the DE3, they are not able to do better because they are going with an auction mechanism, and to converge in the auction, it takes lots of round. That is what the inefficiency there. Because of our exchange of information through signaling, we avoid such bad cases. Okay, good. So just to conclude now, what we had is a framework to study this distributed setting, user this multiplayer bandit. And we just discussed these two cases, heterogeneous and homogeneous cases. And we saw that like why the heterogeneous is going to be more complex than the homogeneous case. And that these things are going to, we talked about optimal matching here, and without requiring any direct communication. All we needed is some kind of implicit communication through collisions. Yeah, what I forgot to tell you, if we are going to make a forced collision, right, this is going to be counted as regret. Like it's not that we are, if we make some round for collision, we don't ignore it like, okay, that is as a part of protocol, that's a collision round, I'm going to ignore. No, if I'm going to use it for a collision, it's better counted as a regret. And we had a near logarithmic regret. And I also made a brief remark about this static and dynamic setting, right? Dynamic setting is what more real than the static setting. And some work is already done. And we have also done some work on this under specific setting. Yeah, but this is going to be much more complex. And these are definitely potentially interesting problem if somebody want to take forward. Yeah, so those who are interested, I'd be happy to share this set of works we have done on this. I will share this slide with you all. If anybody want to get access to this paper, anyway, they are available, but I will be also happy to share the latest version of that. Yeah, with that, yeah, Ketan, I am done with what I wanted to discuss in this seminar. Thank you.
Thanks, Manjesh. Any questions from the audience?
So your group works on such kind of distributed learning, or your kind of setups are totally different than this?
Me? Yeah, I do work a little bit, not specifically on multi-arm bandit, but
Okay.
generally distributed optimization, distributed learning.
Okay. So does that any thing that overlaps here? Like
Yeah, some overlaps are there. So I was able to understand the approaches and bounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think no, if no questions, then thanks a lot, Manjesh.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed your talk.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is there any question?
Thanks, Manjesh.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank
Then
you.
bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.